Good afternoon and a warm welcome from NIIT's studio on behalf of Shraddha Das and Rachna Sarup. This afternoon we are going to be dealing with some learning theories, the learning theories of constructivism, cognitivism, as well as some humanistic theories of learning. We would also be touching upon some learning styles so that you can connect with all of these issues. In this lesson, we expect that after the completion of this lesson, you will be able to explain the concept of constructivism. You will have a good idea of cognitivism as well as the humanistic approaches of learning. You would also be able to describe some learning theories based on different approaches. As opposed to the behaviorist approach, the constructivist approach focuses on construction of knowledge by the learners. In fact, in the constructivist approach, the student is the center of the teaching learning process. Opposed to that, the behaviorists believe that the focus is on modifying behavior in the child, thereby making teacher as the center of the process. So, in our lesson today, we will be focusing more on the constructivist approach, where I repeat, the student is the center of the teaching learning process and the construction of knowledge is to be done by the learner. Let us try and understand constructivism to some extent. Constructivism states that learning is an active, contextualized process of constructing knowledge rather than acquiring it. So the focus here is not on acquiring of knowledge, but actually on constructing knowledge, where the learner is an active participant in the entire process. Here, knowledge is constructed based on personal experiences as well as hypotheses. And here we find that the learner is going to fall back on his or her personal experiences in order to construct the knowledge. And this becomes a contextualized process. So it is contextualized in the context of the learner's own personal experiences, right? And when learners test these hypotheses that they form, they test them through social negotiation. So constructivism is a basic system or an approach to teaching and learning, wherein the entire focus is on construction of the student's learning. Right. And obviously, the student becomes the most important, or let's say the center of the teaching learning process. In fact, there was a common misunderstanding regarding constructivism. Some people believe that, regarding constructivism, that instructors should never tell students anything directly. Instead, we should always allow them to construct knowledge for themselves. But this is not really what the case is. Constructivism assumes that all knowledge is constructed from the learner's previous experience, regardless of how one is taught. So even listening to a lecture, for that matter, involves active attempts to construct new knowledge, right? So constructivism, therefore, involves the learner's own construction of the knowledge rather than acquiring it. Let us try and understand some of the theories that come under constructivism. Some of them are the cognitive apprenticeship, discovery learning by Bruner, situated learning by Lave, problem-based learning, or PBL as it is called, and social development theory of Vygotsky. Let's take up each of these one by one. The cognitive apprenticeship, which is propagated by Collins, Brown, and Newman. Here they developed 6 teaching methods: modeling, coaching, scaffolding, articulation, reflection, and exploration. According to them, these methods enable students to actually use, manage, and discover knowledge. Let's try and see briefly what they mean by modeling. Here it is believed that experts, say for example a teacher or a mentor, would usually demonstrate a task explicitly, and new students or beginners or novices will build a conceptual mold of the task that is at hand. For example, say a math teacher. A math teacher might write out some steps and work through a problem aloud, demonstrating his or her procedural knowledge. So when you say modeling, we are here really talking about demonstration of a task explicitly. Let's look at coaching. In coaching, it is believed that the expert is supposed to give feedback and hints to the learner. Just like a coach, say during a match or during a sports coach for that matter, watches what the student is doing and then gives hints and feedback. So coaching involves giving feedback and hints to the student. The term used here is also their scaffolding, which is the process of supporting students in their learning. This term scaffolding, as you may be knowing, has come from, say, the construction industry, where, as you know, support structures are built around the building, right? So in the same way, support structures are put into place here also. So the teacher or the expert may have to help with some aspects of the task that the student is not yet able to do. And of course, the idea with scaffolding is that as the student becomes more and more adept and competent in managing the tasks, the teacher gradually, or the coach gradually removes the support as and when required. Articulation. Here, actually, articulation is basically, verbalizing or demonstrating knowledge and trying to clarify them as clearly as possible. So this process of articulation basically gets the students to articulate their knowledge, their reasoning, or their problem-solving process, which sometimes includes, other processes like inquiry teaching, in which the student asks a series of questions that allows them to refine and restate their learned knowledge and form proper explicit models. So articulation is nothing but clarifying and putting it in a clear manner so that the learner is able to grasp more clearly. Let's look at reflection. Reflection actually allows students to compare their own problem-solving processes with those of the expert or of the teacher. Not only of the expert or teacher, but also of other students. So if I compare my own problem-solving process with the problem-solving processes of another student or the expert, and ultimately I form an internal cognitive model of expertise, that is what reflection here denotes. And a technique for reflection could be, say, to examine the past performances of both the expert or the teacher as well as of the learner, and to highlight the similarities and differences. The main goal over here, or the main aim of reflection, is for the student to be able to look back and analyze their own performance and also try and have a desire for improvement. So the idea is that can my behavior or can my learning become more and more like the experts? That is what the process of reflection is supposed to finally lead to. Let's look at the other thing here, exploration, which really involves giving students a space or a room to solve their own problems and look into exploration strategies so that they actually start searching or seeking answers for themselves, right? The teacher slowly withdraws the use of supports and scaffolds, and the student actually then learns how to explore more carefully. When we say explore, we are talking about researching, we are talking about developing their own hypothesis, and exploration actually allows the student to frame interesting problems within the domain, and then they start taking the initiative to even solve those problems. So all these methods and techniques come under the cognitive apprenticeship system, where Collins, Brown, and Newman have perpetuated, right? Moving on to Bruner's discovery learning. Discovery learning as the name suggests, is an inquiry-based constructivist learning theory. This takes place effectively in problem-solving situations where the learner really draws on his or her own past experiences as well as existing knowledge to discover facts and relationships as well as new truths that may be learned over here. Now, when we talk about discovery learning, it is believed that this technique has multiple advantages. I'm sure all of you can also think of some of the advantages that discovery learning might have. Would anybody like to go on to the click hand option and type in the toolbar, what do you think are some of the advantages of the discovery learning technique, which is an inquiry-based kind of a technique? Do you see any advantages in following such a technique? I'd like you to go to the raise hand option and type out your responses, if any. The question is, what according to you could be some of the advantages of using discovery learning as a technique? Yes, we have a response from a student who says, you come across many facts as you discover and search on your own. Very true. As you discover, as you explore, you come across many new facts. We have another response where you're saying that it increases the logical power of the child. True. The child, another student is saying the child becomes more and more confident. No doubt. So discovery learning is very helpful because it encourages active engagement. It promotes, or let's say it kind of motivates the learner. It gives learner the responsibility as well as independence to explore on his or her own. And putting responsibility of learning on the learner is a very good idea, because then the learner starts to kind of take initiative and starts to get into a mode of active engagement. Also, as you rightly said, using the discovery learning method leads to development of a lot of creativity. Also, problem-solving skills come to the forefront. In fact, it becomes a much richer and well-tailored learning experience, right? While we're discussing the advantages of the discovery learning method by Bruner, may I also ask if any of you can think of any disadvantages of discovery learning, if you think there could be any? Do you think there can be some disadvantages also of the discovery learning method of Bruner? So, as you've rightly said, advantages are many. The motivation of the children, their confidence develops. You come across so many facts. It promotes autonomy, independence, no doubt. But would you like to suggest any disadvantages that may come up with discovery learning? Would you like to go to the raise hand option and type what you think are the disadvantages of discovery learning, if at all? So, one of you is saying that a student may get into a wrong conclusion or develop some kind of a wrong concept. That is possible. Another one of you is responding saying that at times a child can get confused with so much information. Absolutely. In fact, there is a term for it, a technical term for it called cognitive overload. You know, when so much information is there leading to a lot of confusion. So yes, these could be some of the disadvantages, that there could be a creation of a cognitive overload. There could be a potential of getting into a lot of misconceptions, getting confused with a lot of ideas. And there's one more basic problem here, and that is that the teacher may fail to detect the problem at an early stage, you know. And if there is any misconception by the child or problem that he or she is facing, the teacher may not come to know if we get into the discovery learning mode. However, I'm sure all of us agree that there may be a few disadvantages undoubtedly, but definitely Bruner's discovery learning technique is highly recommended for all. And I think the disadvantages are perhaps less than the advantages. And the important thing is, as long as the teacher is aware that there can be disadvantages, I think she will be alert to this fact. So these are all some of the constructivist approaches that we are discussing. Moving to the next one. The situated learning theory by Lev. Now, it is believed that learning, according to Lev, learning is situated. That is, as it normally occurs, learning is embedded within activity, context, and culture. It is usually unintentional rather than deliberate. Okay, and so it's actually in contrast with most of the classroom learning activities that involve abstract knowledge. And Lev says that learning is situated, that is, it is occurring normally within the activity, context, and culture. So it is often said, therefore, that knowledge then needs to be presented in an authentic context. That is why it is often advised to teachers that try to bring in a real-life connection when you are engaging in teaching and learning. Because if you try and bring in an authentic context or a real-life situation, settings and situations that would normally be familiar to the student, right? Therein, the learner becomes more and more involved. So the situated learning theory emphasizes on that, right? This becomes an important tip for all of us as teachers, that let's try and situate our learning. That is, let's try and place our learning within the context there, where the student is more likely to learn. Let's look at the next one on the slide, problem-based learning, or PBL for short, as it is called. This is a very popular pedagogical approach, and it is often used in K-12 segment, that is right from junior classes to senior classes. Now, rather than have a teacher providing you with all the facts and then testing the student's ability to recall all these facts or testing them through memorization and recall, the attempt of problem-based learning is to try and get students to apply the knowledge to new situations. So PBL is a completely application-based kind of a technique where students are faced with contextualized, ill-structured problems, and they are asked to investigate further and discover meaningful solutions to those problems. So PBL is a technique which, if some of you have used, you would have realized that instead of you as a teacher providing all the facts to the students and then giving them a test and finding out whether they are able to recall those facts or not, that is not what is followed in PBL. What needs to be followed in PBL is present a situation to the child. Preferably it should be a new situation. Maybe you should give an opportunity for the child to relate some knowledge that you have earlier explained. And when the child is faced with this kind of a problem, the child is then further pushed into investigating and discovering meaningful solutions to that problem. So this particular technique of PBL, we need to be very, very clear here. The teacher has to be well equipped. She should be able to provide what are called open-ended problems. So very often in the PBL approach, the teacher needs to be aware that there may not be any one single right answer, so to say, because you are opening up a situation where the child is going to work as a self-directed learner, where the child is going to be an active investigator and problem solver. In fact, PBL is often rolled out in small collaborative groups. Ideally, they say maybe a group size of, say, 5 students or so would make a great group for a PBL-based kind of a learning. So here the teacher has to be open-minded. She needs to be alert to the fact that there may not be any one perfect right answer. which we are traditionally sometimes used to, as well as we give the child a chance to work as an active investigator, as a problem solver, as a self-directed learner. And what happens here is that a key problem which is identified and presented to the children, and then the children try to investigate and look for a solution, agree upon it, and see whether that is implementable. So in such a system or problem-based learning, the teacher is typically adopting the role of a facilitator of learning. Here, she is guiding the learning process. In fact, she is perhaps promoting an environment of inquiry rather than sharing some straightforward facts and then just checking whether the children can recall the facts. So I hope you can see that this is a definite move away from the old traditional techniques. PBL attempts to get students to apply knowledge, as we said, and therefore I'd like you to think about what do you think can be some of the benefits of using problem-based learning as a strategy for teaching and learning. So go to the raise hand option and type out what you think could be some of the benefits of using PBL as a strategy. Do you think it is of any use? Do you think it's a good strategy to use? If you think so, then please type into the raise hand option why you think or what could be some of the benefits of using PBL. Very true. One of you is saying that using PBL helps us in developing creative skills of the students, no doubt. Their creative skills are surely developed. The child is able to understand more deeply, no doubt, because the child is here exploring, investigating, and then coming up with some kind of learning, no doubt about that. So yes, you're right. Definitely it helps the children develop problem-solving skills. It increases their motivation to learn, because when you present a child, or in fact why a child, if you present anybody with a problem, it kind of becomes a sort of a challenge to solve that problem, right? So then the child or the learner gets more and more involved with solving it. That's correct. So it helps to develop problem-solving skills in a variety of situations, as one of you is rightly typed in the toolbar. It boosts their self-confidence, because when the child ends up discovering something or reaching certain conclusions, it's very exciting for him or her. Also, as another one of you has written, it helps to increase their motivation, as well as students can use a lot of these techniques in day-to-day life, undoubtedly. So what happens over here is that since the child is self-directed here, since the child is an active investigator and problem solver, we find that his or her involvement is huge. And because the involvement is so deep, the child's engagement level is very high. Therefore, all of these wonderful skills of the child are able to develop very, very effectively. So you are right that this is a highly desirable technique that we can use, and this is strongly propagated by the constructivists. Right. Our discussion on constructivism may not be complete without mentioning Vygotsky's social development theory. In fact, Vygotsky's theory is usually used as one of the foundations of constructivism. Vygotsky is a Russian psychologist. We will be going much deeper into Vygotsky's social development theory later when we study certain sections of the theories of child development. We'll be going more and more into detail at that time. However, here, as part of our constructivist learning theory, we'll touch upon one or two aspects at this stage. Vygotsky actually asserts three major themes which we need to talk about. According to Vygotsky, social interaction plays a fundamental role in the process of cognitive development. In fact, according to Vygotsky, social learning precedes development. In other words, when the child is in the company of others, or environment is playing so many, it's playing a big role in developing the child. He says that every function in the child's cultural development happens first on the social level and later on the individual level. So Vygotsky is a great propagator of social interaction. The other issue that Vygotsky talks about is the MKO, or more knowledge other. MKO refers to anyone who has a better understanding or a higher ability level than the learner with respect to a particular task or a particular process or a particular concept. So MKO is normally thought of as being maybe a coach or a teacher, would be an adult. But MKO very often can also be peers. It can be a younger person. In fact, lately we have started saying that MKO can also be computer. It can be the computer. So MKO is nothing but, it stands for the more knowledgeable other. So Vygotsky's social development theory has this important foundation. He asserts this theme also, saying that we need to recognize that there is an MKO, and it refers to anybody or anything that has a higher ability than the learner at that particular point in time. It could be with respect to a particular task or a particular concept. So in Vygotsky's social development theory, MKO definitely plays a role. The other important thing that you need to connect with Vygotsky is the ZPD, or the zone of proximal development. We will of course be going into much greater detail, as I have mentioned earlier, when we do a lesson on the theories of child development. However, the ZPD, I'd like to just let you know, is the distance between a student's ability to perform a task under adult guidance and or with his peers, and the student's ability of solving that problem independently. Okay, so what are we saying? There are some tasks that the student can do independently. There are some tasks that the student can do only under the guidance of or along with somebody else. That somebody else could be a peer, it could be a teacher, it could be an adult, anybody. So according to Vygotsky, this is the zone. The zone is that distance between the two. The ability to solve a problem yourself, that is independently, and the ability to perform a task under adult guidance or peer collaboration. So the distance between the two, according to Vygotsky, learning occurs during that zone. So when you are first learning, say, with support from others, and gradually are able to do it independently. So the shift that has happened, that from being somebody who was initially supported to being somebody who was able to do it independently. I hope you understand that there is a span of time that goes in between that. That span, according to Vygotsky, is the ZPD. That is the zone of proximal development. So, and he focuses on this, saying that this is the zone during which learning has occurred. Obviously, learning has occurred, because if earlier you were able to do something only with the help of others, and later you are able to do it independently. So it's obvious that some change has happened. You have become much, much more competent and confident to perform that task on your own. So that shift from being able to do it with help to being able to do it independently, that zone is what he calls the zone of proximal development. So Vygotsky is somebody who focuses a lot on social interaction, as I mentioned. So he says that people and their socio-cultural context, they kind of act, or let's say interact in the form of shared experiences. And Vygotsky also says that humans use tools that develop from a particular culture. So initially children develop tools to, just perform certain social functions, or maybe to just communicate. But he says gradually, as children grow older, they start internalizing these tools, leading to higher thinking skills. Right? So Vygotsky is somebody who is supposed to be one of the founders, you could say, of constructivist way of thinking. And we will be getting into many more details related to Vygotsky as we move towards the discussion on theories of child development. Right. So, are there any inputs or questions? And just to facilitate a little bit of a recap of what we have done so far, we discussed very briefly what constructivism implies. In fact, we took it up as opposed to behaviorism, and we said that constructivism is something where we say that students are expected to, or the learner is expected to construct his or her own knowledge. And then we said that where constructivism is concerned, there are multiple thoughts and there are various theories that apply to it. We have touched upon each of these, which you can see on the slide in front of you. Right? Now, based on these, let's have a small discussion on this. Can you suggest a scenario or a topic or a some theme or some such lesson or concept where you think students can learn very well through the discovery method? One of the methods we discussed, if you remember, was the discovery method. Can you suggest some scenario or some topic where you know that students can learn better through the discovery method? You can type in your responses by going into the raise hand option. Give a suggestion of a topic or a scenario which you can suggest, which would work very well if we use the discovery method for that topic. Okay. Okay, so one of the students is suggesting maybe when we are teaching types of flora and fauna, we can suggest the discovery method to be used. Okay, great. When you're teaching textures, so we can use the discovery method as suggested by another student. Another suggestion is coming that when we are getting the students to discover new parts of the world, say through a map or something, we may suggest to them some topics between, we can use the discovery method over there, undoubtedly. Any other ideas? So, right. Okay, so another suggestion is coming that when we are teaching students about monuments, should we suggest the discovery method to them? Probably here you're thinking that let them go and visit the monument, right? So that may not technically be part of the discovery method, but yes, it is at least not something that you're teaching out of the book. You're saying maybe visit the monument or something like that, right? Another suggestion is coming that when you're explaining fractions, you may use the discovery method. Okay, so how would you use the discovery method for when you're explaining fraction? Would you like to elaborate? So what I can visualize is that say if I was teaching fractions, maybe I would have taken maybe a pizza and cut it up into equal parts and then leave it there, and maybe as you're suggesting, help them discover how fraction is a part of a whole. So yes, that also can work. Say you're teaching about magnetic needles and the compass, you may ask the students to explore and figure out why the needle is always pointing north and things like that. So these are all suggestions on how we can use the discovery method, or in what kinds of scenarios and topics can you use discovery method. Do you think discovery method is better for any particular age group, or would you suggest discovery method could be used by teachers for teaching any classes? So would you recommend? So give me your responses in the raise hand option toolbar. Can we use discovery method for any one particular kind of class or any classes? Well, yes, one of you is saying it can be used for any class. That's true. So depending on the kind of topics we are handling, it should be, of course, age appropriate. The discovery method is recommended for maybe any classes. Great. Okay, let's look at the second discussion question on the slide in front of you. Think of the stages that a person follows while he or she is engaged in problem-based learning. So if you're getting into problem-based learning, which we also call PBL, if you recall, what are the stages that anybody is following if they are going into this problem-based learning? So if we want to create learning through PBL, what are we putting the child through? What are the various stages or phases and thoughts or some activities going on in the brain? What all stages would he or she have to go through in order to solve that problem? So using PBL, what are the stages that one needs to go through to solve the problem? Explain, explore, elaborate. One of you is saying that. Okay. Anything else? I'll ask you to go to the raise hand bar and type what you think. Students would go through many solutions before achieving the right solution, increasing their vision and problem-solving activity, making them mentally prepared whenever any problem comes. Okay, that's a response that I was reading out from another student here. Okay, so think about what are the stages, or let's say the steps that one goes through before solving any problem for that matter. Say you were faced with a problem. What are the kind of steps or the stages that you might go for? So first, what would you do? Number one, the cause. Okay. Understand the problem, explore it. Okay, great. So yes, the steps that are usually associated with problem-based learning is, number one, you identify the problem. So you state or phrase that problem in very clear terms, which is absolutely understandable by you. So you identify the problem. That's step number one. Step number two could be to prepare a plan, or to get into clarifying certain issues related to it by gathering information and evidences, right? So you identify the problem, you get a plan or a framework in mind, then you try and gather information and evidences so that that problem, so that you come closer to the solution perhaps. Then you start, after you've gathered the information, you start analyzing that information or that data that you have gathered, right? And once you have analyzed that data, you probably reach a sort of a hypothesis of the probable solutions, right? So that is one way of looking at it. So when you're exposing students to problem-based learning, you're actually helping them to develop all these skills. You're helping them develop the skills of how to make a plan, how to then identify or gather evidences and information that will help them reach closer to the solution. You are also giving them skills, analytical skills, through which they will analyze those data or information that they may have gathered. And from that, you are also giving them the skills of being able to frame a hypothesis and look for probable solutions, right? So PBL is therefore a very, very, let's say, a highly desirable technique, which definitely helps students in more than one ways. So it not only helps them to probably solve the problem at hand, but as we discussed earlier, it also helps in developing creative thinking, critical thinking, improving problem-solving skills, increasing motivation of students, and helping students learn how to transfer knowledge from a known area into a new situation, right? Great. Let's look at the third question that you see on your slide in front of you. What do you think could be an appropriate strategy that a teacher who's using a constructivist approach What is the strategy she will use to teach the concept of, say, nutrition and a balanced diet? So a teacher who's believing in the constructivist approach, if she has to teach nutrition and balanced diet, what kind of strategy do you think, or what kind of strategy do you think she would use if she was a believer in the constructivist approach? So in other words, how would she teach nutrition and balanced diet? Would you like to type that out in the raise hand option toolbar? So if she's wanting to teach nutrition and balanced diet, what are the various things that the teacher would like to do? So one of you is saying she'll tell the students about the benefits of various fruits and vegetables, daily requirement of minerals and vitamins, okay? In fact, another student is responding saying that she may ask the students to bring their favorite fruit and then explain its nutrients, okay? Great. Another one of you has responded saying that eating a healthy diet in the lunch box and then speak about the food that they have brought, correct? So all these techniques that you all are suggesting are actually constructivist approach to teaching the concept of nutrition and balanced diet, no doubt. And suppose the teacher was a behaviorist, okay? Another one of you has responded saying that you'll ask them to make a healthy dish and explain why they think it is a healthy dish, correct? Depending on the class, the age group, very true. And my next question to you is, as I mentioned earlier, suppose you have to teach the same topic, nutrition and balanced diet, but you are not a believer in constructivism. Suppose you are a teacher who believes in the behaviorist way of thinking. What would you do then? Would you change your strategy? Is there any other technique you would suggest if you were using a behaviorist approach, if you had to teach nutrition and balanced diet through a behaviorist approach? Any suggestions? Right, one of you is suggesting that we might have given them a diet chart directly, maybe. So it's not that we will go into any of these techniques of, asking them to bring a lunch box and things like that. Straight away we may give them a diet chart, right? Okay, another response from one of you is that I might bring the items on my own and show them. Okay. Another student is responding saying that I might explain it through some flashcards, correct? So all these then become the behaviorist approach of dealing with the same topic, correct? So I hope through this discussion and these examples, you are quite clear about the difference between a behaviorist approach and the approach of constructivists, right? So with that, I think we will take, we will do one or two questions here also. Have a look at the question on the slide in front of you. Constructivism as a theory, and there are 4 possible options. Try and identify what according to you is the correct option. Constructivism as a theory focuses on the role of imitation, emphasizes the role of the learner in constructing his own view of the world, emphasizing on memorizing information and testing through recall, or emphasizes on the dominant role of the teacher. So what according to you should be the correct option out of the 4 that you see on the slide? Please go ahead and type out your options. So all of you are responding to, that's correct. It shows that all of you have understood that constructivism basically emphasizes the role of the learner in constructing your own role, the role of the learner in constructing his own view of the world. Right. Let's look at the next one. This is on Vygotsky's social development theory. Which of the following is based on Vygotsky's theory? operant conditioning, reciprocal teaching, cultural neutral cognitive development, and insight learning. What do you think should be the correct option out of these four? Type out your right answers according to you. Remember, Vygotsky believes in the social development, right? Okay. Some of you all are typing 3, some are typing 4 in the bar. Think again. Social development theory, the biggest, let's say the biggest hint is there for you. Operant conditioning, reciprocal teaching, cultural neutral cognitive development, insight learning. Any rethinking happening? Somebody is saying 1, somebody 3. Actually, where Vygotsky is concerned, his basic theory deals with interaction with outside, with others. So the correct option here is 2, reciprocal teaching. Because in reciprocal teaching, as the name suggests, one person is teaching the other. So it could mean peer interaction, it could mean the teacher teaching the learner, it could mean one group trying to explain something to another group. So wherever there is social interaction, that should be your biggest hint. And wherever Vygotsky is concerned, you will realize that reciprocal teaching is definitely the one which is the correct answer here, right? So this particular, in this case, option 2 is the right answer. Okay. Let's look at the next question, which is not a key concept of problem-based learning. Which is not a key concept of problem-based learning? 1, instructor integrates problem-based learning. 2, instructor is authoritative source of information. 3, instructor guides, probes, and supports student initiatives. 4, all of the above. Read the question carefully. Which is not a key concept of problem-based learning? Okay, some are saying 1, some are saying 4. Which is not? Some are saying 2. Okay. So in problem-based learning, what does not happen is what we have to look at. You are right. The correct option is 2. In the problem-based learning, as we studied a little while ago, instructor is definitely not the authoritative source of information. Instead, as you are aware, the student is the one who engages in what we call self-directive, active, investigative approach and a problem-solving approach. The instructor is not giving the source or is not the authoritative source of information. Undoubtedly, that is what is the correct answer. So the second option is the right answer. Okay. So what we have just covered very briefly is the theory of constructivism in its outline. We are now giving you a short 5-minute break. When you come back after the break, after exactly 5 minutes, we will take up the next theory of cognitivism. A short 5-minute break for you.